Hey there, I'm Krista Vance, entrepreneur and operations leader.
And I'm Matt Vance, award-winning author and social innovation researcher. We're your hosts of the Culture Profit Podcast.
Your place for purposeful company culture strategy.
Learn from HR pros, executives, and thought leaders how to prioritize profits by prioritizing people.
This episode is sponsored by Mobrium, the best friend of forward-thinking HR leaders, helping you strengthen your employer reputation as a reflection of your real culture.
Learn more at mobrium.com. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's episode. Hiring should not feel like dating in the dark. Andrea Hoffer of AHA Talent Experts joins us to talk about her dream hire framework, how to actually match hires to culture, and why great interviews start way before the first question is asked. So, Andrea, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Matt and Krista. I'm really excited to be here. This is one of my favorite topics.
We're excited to have you, and I'm excited to share about Andrea today. Andrea Hoffer is an experienced talent acquisition and management strategist and entrepreneur with a passion for building exceptional teams. As the founder of AHA Talent Experts, she has helped businesses nationwide improve recruitment processes, align hiring with company culture, and develop employer brands that attract top talent. Drawing from over 30 years in recruitment and just under 2 decades as a successful business owner, Andrea understands firsthand how great hires drive long-term success. A certified AI consultant, she blends technology and human insight to streamline hiring, optimize talent acquisition, and create tailored onboarding experiences. Andrea is also a sought-after keynote speaker and the author of Hire with a mission to empower companies and candidates alike. She specializes in crafting hiring strategies that not only fill positions, but build cohesive, high-performing teams. Wow, so much there, so much experience. Tell us a little bit about you and just everything leading up to this.
And I just have one little follow-up from your bio.
Yes.
Your hire? Is
Well,
that
that's pretty awesome. I love that, first of all. But the AI certification piece, I'm curious about that too.
Yeah, tell us about your AI certification.
Sure. So I became fascinated with AI when it started becoming mainstream. Just when some people were starting to hear about ChatGPT. I think at that point, 80% of the people I talked to still didn't know what ChatGPT was. And when I am interested in something, I dive right in. I want to know everything.
That's a great quality.
I signed up for an MIT certification on using AI and data analytics. Because it was the first course I could find that I felt like, oh, this is going to, I'm going to learn so much. And it was hard. It was, like a several-month class. There were actual assignments. I think I worked harder in that class than I did in my MBA. Like,
Wow.
at least it felt that way. Probably because I was a little out of my depth, but I did pass. And then since then, I've been taking a lot of other AI certifications. I think I have 4 or 5 at this point.
Okay.
Different kinds. They're much more practical. And I use a lot of AI in what we do at the business and in when I teach and train. So even just using it to help you to be more successful at hiring. I mean, it's made what we do at AHA and our dream hire framework that I know we're going to talk about in a little bit, it's made it so much easier to do and to teach our clients how to do in a way that's accessible.
And so much more efficient, I'm sure,
Yes, efficient, streamlined, and just, I don't know, for me, AI helps me to be more creative, things I've been wanting to do for decades that I just didn't know how to do, technology wise.
Yeah.
I'm a little obsessed. I watch, I start my day every morning. I'm going to share a little secret here that I haven't really told many people, but every morning I start my day for at least a half hour, sometimes an hour, watching YouTube videos on AI and talent acquisition. A lot of it's on AI, but if I can find, anything that relates to talent acquisition with it, I do. And that way I stay on top of the greatest tricks that I can.
The trends.
The trends. Every hour something new comes out. So you have to, if you want to be on top of it, you kind of have to put aside a certain amount of time.
That's impressive.
That's so cool. And I love how you said it helps you be more creative, because it kind of fills in the knowledge gaps that you don't have and allows you to use your time and energy put into the creative side of things instead of just like, how do I even do this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And even before AI, I had a lot of content. I've created tons of content over the years. And this has allowed me to feed it to AI, my content, not just putting it out there for whatever on the LLM, but reusing my content in certain ways that I can teach, I can share, I can extract it and find ways to use it in real life. And I was actually even just working on an article earlier this morning on using, how to really amplify your employer brand in a way that AI is going to pick it up. We've been so concerned about SEO for decades, right?
Yep.
And there's still something to SEO, but now I had the latest stat. It was around 76% of job seekers, instead of just, we used to say your job seekers are researching you before they're applying, right? Or before they're even thinking about working for you. And they want to see what they can find. And so you want good reviews on Glassdoor and, a career site. But it's so much more than that now, because they're not going to Google anymore. They're going to Chat GPT or maybe a Google AI project. They're going to an AI and putting in, find me jobs that have good work-life balance, or that will give me flexibility in my schedule, or that allows me to work remote, or that's recognized for my industry. And unless you've put a lot of content out there in a very structured way, it's not going to pick it up as the way you want it to. So there's a whole new way, and it's both for business, sales as well, sales and marketing. But I focus on it related to hiring and how to get the word out about the culture at your business in a way that's accessible to who you're trying to attract. So that's
very powerful.
Yeah, and a lot of times when people are searching, they may be searching on Gemini or Chat GPT just about a specific job, and it just compiles all the data about that company and what people say about it and what the positives and negatives are, all in one paragraph. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's honestly, we've been diving more into AI as well to be more efficient, and I think applying it to the hiring use case is really important. So tell us a little bit more about the AHA Talent Experts, like the background there and your Dream Hire framework.
Okay, so there's two different stories there, but I'll start briefly with that. So I started my career working on college campuses. I have my original degree is something called in college student personnel work. Most people have never heard of it, but essentially it's a degree to work on college campuses, helping college students to develop leadership skills and just become the best of who they are. I think it's a great career for anyone. And it's also, there's a lot of ways you can transition and use what you learned from that career to other things like I did. So when I decided I then wanted to go out in the business world, and I won't get into all the reasons why, I went back and got my MBA and eventually invested in a massage MD spa. That was That was my first business we opened in July of 2006. And I had that for 10 years. And I won't go into all the different stories related to that. But one of the things I kept thinking when I owned the spa was, because I was having a lot of challenges with my front desk, not as much with my therapist team, but my front desk just kept turning over. Or I would have employees that were great in customer service, but terrible in sales. And the front desk needed to be great in sales. Yes. And I was like, and I would just be hiring, have a help wanted sign, and people would walk in and I'd ask them a few questions, hiring on the spot. And then one day I said, what am I doing? Because part of my background, I was highly trained in interviewing, in creating effective hiring processes. And I had gotten so caught up in the day-to-day of the business.
Yeah.
It's all new to me, right? I mean, I had run businesses before, but not my own. And I had 33 employees, I think, at that point. And so I was like, I need to take a step back and start kind of creating processes based on what I've learned. And even though I feel this urgency to fill spots, I need to do this right. So I did. And I also did a lot of research on best practices at the time. And I was specifically looking for hiring around hourly employees, since that was my need. And it also was where I came from with the college campus. I had managed and led hourly teams for over a decade before. Anyway, the things that I put in place really started working to the point where other franchisees were asking me about my process, and I was part of different entrepreneur networks. So other business owners that I knew were asking me. So I had this little consulting company I had already started for other reasons. And I started offering these, hiring type services, helping franchisees, small businesses that were growing and needed hourly employees. And that's how AHA Talent Experts was born. That's kind of the short story, even though it was still kind of long. And then to get to the dream framework, first, over the years, I came up with a 3-step process that I outline in my book, Hire, which is HIRE, HIGHER. And that came out a few years ago. And then last year, I was sort of kind of going, I was doing something with a client, and I realized there's really 5 stages. There's lots of steps, but there are really 5 stages. And a lot of what I talk about in my book falls under the stages. But something clicked in my head, and I said, well, our tagline has been for years, we build dream teams. And I'm like, you know what? The 5 stages actually match up with the DREAM. And all of a sudden, the Dream Hire framework was born. And it was like such a aha, if I can say aha. And since then, that's, it's been so much easier to teach what I know within that framework. And I can go deep into a stage or kind of high level. And even high level, I find is, really helpful for people.
Yeah, maybe let's start with that high level, and then we can dive into it more as, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say how cool it is that, you're in this spa industry, you're doing all these different things throughout the whole business, but you've got this expertise in this area, and then you develop this methodology that is then obviously working, and then you realize, okay, well, we can then go replicate that in other areas. I think that's really cool. Just wanted to give you kudos for that and say really, really neat. And I'm excited to hear the dream framework.
And I feel like a lot of acronyms, people find a word and then they force it to be an acronym, You had your methodology first and then lined it up with, that's very seamless. So
and Chrissy, that's a really great point, because for years I would try to do an acronym, right? And nothing was matching for me. So it wasn't until it sort of formed itself
Yeah, that means it's good.
So
So take us through it. Yeah.
D is define. And I feel it is the most important piece. And it sounds so simple, right? It's all about clarifying, not only clarifying your company culture, because a lot of people will do that. A lot of businesses will have it all, a beautiful sign, but it's more about what are the behaviors that show up that really match up to what that culture is, what those core values are. And we don't just talk about culture here when we're defining if there are particular roles that you need filled, or roles in your company. You're also defining what are the success traits. How does what type of traits or how people show up for that particular role. So you're looking at the company as a whole, the culture, and the role, because I have seen this over and over again where people hire great cultural fits, right? But they can't do the job, or maybe they can do the job, but it's not really what they wanted to do. So it's also, is this what they want to do? Or have they done it in the past and they're really looking to do something different? And I've seen the opposite too, where they hire people who are great in the job, perfect fit for the job, but not fit for the culture. So it's really important to find both. And sometimes when you do find the great cultural fit and you might realize, hey, they're not the right fit for that role, if you can find the right role for them within your company, I wouldn't.
Right. A culture fit. So
yeah.
Okay, clear job.
So you did define. Now it's all the R, the reach. How are you going to reach the people that you've now defined who you need? And we start with the job posting here. And not that the job posting is the end all, right? I like it because it gives us almost like a roadmap. So we typically in the define stage, we do, it's usually about a 90-minute deep dive discovery session with our client, and we record it and transcribe it. And now with AI, we can slice and dice it and do a lot with it. It used to take several hours a day for several days to get it to what we want. But we've always had a specific formula that we use for job postings. And so we take the information from define and put it into that formula, that format, so that it's answering all the questions that the candidates are looking for. But it also becomes almost our answer key for when you're doing interviewing too. Years ago when I was working on college campus, I had this supervisor who did a lot of training with us on hiring. And she used to say, before we even start a search, I've learned a lot from her. Before we even start a search, we need to kind of create this persona of who we're looking for. And every time we're evaluating the candidates, we're not evaluating them against each other. We're evaluating them against that persona. So I always, tell my team and the clients we work with, okay, you're telling me all these things that, why you want this person. Well, let's go back and read the job posting, because this is what you said you wanted. Does it fit? Are we describing this person here? And if not, that's okay. If you have additional information now that maybe you need something a little different, but you need to go into this with open eyes, of that's why you made the change. So reach, now you're creating the messaging, and that's where the job board, the job ads start. And then you're creating your employer brand, getting your culture out there. What does it look like? What is a day in the life? People say it all the time, but they don't really put that information out there. Pictures, videos, even if you're remote, as much as possible, show them what it is like, so that even if somebody isn't, didn't yet apply for the job, like we were talking about earlier, but looks you up, they can find information of what it's all about. And then you go to engage, and engage incorporates a lot of things. This is your candidate experience. This is the experience for potential candidates. Are you nurturing them? People who have shown interest in the past, did you capture their information so that you're nurturing them, continuing to tell them about your culture, maybe sending them job tips? And how are you engaging the candidates currently in the pipeline, currently applying for your jobs? Are you sitting there, are they sitting there wondering if they're ever going to hear from you again? How long are you making that process, and are you communicating with them? We have a, I guess you call it a policy or a promise, where we will engage with candidates currently in the process at least every 3 days. We really try to do it every 24 hours from the last touch. But if we're waiting on a hiring manager, maybe a hiring manager is on vacation, or they're very involved in a project, or something happened and there isn't funding for a job, that has happened to us many times. Yeah. We let the candidate know that there's some sort of holdup, but that that the employer is still really interested. And we always ask them, has anything changed on your end? So that we know, maybe they found another job, but they kind of like this job better. We want to know what's going on in their head. And, it always makes me feel good. And we've had this happen a lot over the years, where a candidate will write somebody on my team or myself just a note saying, even when they didn't get the job. We actually had this last year where, one was like, I just want you to know this has been one of the best experiences, even though this wasn't the right job, I really felt like you were in this.
That's awesome.
And the truth is, it doesn't take a lot now. There's so much automation you can set up, and AI. I'm not saying to just leave the automation and AI and step away. You still have to, some of these things are not, you can't automate. You have to be,
Yeah, the personal side of it, but you can carry the brunt of it.
Exactly. So engage is really important. I think a lot of employers sometimes forget about that part. And then we have assess, and this is where you're screening candidates. Often we talk about interviews under, assess, but what are the different ways you're determining that this person is the right fit for your culture and your role? And are you giving them an opportunity to assess you? And how are you coming across? And I know we're going to talk in a little bit about the best way to ask interview questions, so I won't dig into that right now.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute.
And we'll just, finish up with M, which I had always done separately. This was one of the things that I didn't really talk about in my book, and that's motivate, because we lose candidates often. Just because they accepted an offer, you can't then forget about them, right? You still need that engage. And that's why my dream hire framework is a circle, because you're really you're kind of always redefining, making sure you're on track. But that motivate is that's constant. Somebody could be with you 3 years and their motivations have changed. The things that they want are different. You can't just assume that they're still inspired. So, that part is so important from the day that they start to engage with you on any level. But I think where we fall off a lot is when they accept the offer. What happens then? Maybe they're not starting for 2 weeks because they're giving 2 weeks or even 2 months. Well, don't wait the 2 months to communicate with them again. And just think onboarding is about, all the paperwork and the compliance. Send them a note of how excited you are that they're starting, introduce them to the people they're going to be working with, even if it's just through email. Ask if you can give their email out to the rest of the team and encourage the team to start reaching out and saying hello to them. And please make sure you really prepare them for that first day. Make them feel welcome. They shouldn't have to worry about where they park, if it's on site. They shouldn't have to worry about if they're allowed to leave for lunch or where the best lunch places are. Really, you want to take them out for the first day if it's in person. We used to say when was in office all the time, make sure that there's a name tag on their office or on their desk, wherever you normally have a name tag. Don't have them walk into an office that is blank when everybody else's has their name on it. Really make them feel like you've been preparing for them. And then, keep that inspiration going, do constant check-ins. There's so much I can say, but I know
I think you're exactly right. Having clear expectations when they're hired is so big, so they're not wondering. And it's kind of like when you get an invitation and you're like, how am I supposed to dress for this? And then you show up in the wrong type of, you're casual and it's a nice dress or something. It's like that. And they want to just have clear expectations and just know what is expected when they get to their job, and make them feel welcome and comfortable. So I just want to go hit those one more time. So define, reach, engage. And I almost thought employer branding was in there because that's an E too, but engage. And then A was assess, and that we're going to get into that one, and then motivate.
Correct.
So good. That really does fit perfectly with the methodology that you're talking about. And I just wanted to mention, and I hope I'm not spoiling anything. I can take this out if I am, but you mentioned last time we talked, Andrea, about your job post roast. And so stay tuned. Make sure you're following her, because her team, they're putting something together, and you can put your own job post out there and let her roast it. And fix it.
Actually, I am so glad that you mentioned it, because we have 3 spots left. We are launching.
That's awesome.
Next week is when I'm going to start roasting. And let me clarify, roast, we use the word because some people are like, well, are you going to really tear us apart? I'm like, I'm a pretty nice person.
Not like ladies
but you're putting it on the stage
X.
to be looked at and to provide feedback. I love it.
Right, exactly. So if you want to participate, please, you can email me. You can put in your notes there. I don't know when this is actually airing because we're doing this next week, but if people like it, I can do it again. But part of what, if they participate, they'll see the video of where I'm walking through and roasting their job posting and how to improve it. But then we will also send them a polished job post. We'll send to them directly that they can use. And if they want, we will then share it on our network of, our social media has over 15,000 followers through the different platforms, especially LinkedIn. So it will be a good way for them to attract the right person that they're looking for.
Well, we'll definitely see if we can send a couple your way for that job post roast. This episode may be posted after that, but people should still check it out because I'm sure they can learn so much from the ones that get the roasting.
Some examples.
And be able to apply that to their own job posts. And so, okay, now let's take a minute and to dive into the A, your dream assessment. You have a 90-minute dream assessment. Tell us a little bit about that and the purpose.
Okay, so that's a discovery session, and that falls under define.
Define, okay, right. It's not
a foundation, but it does, everything builds on top of that. We can't really do any of the other stages if we haven't done define well. And so during the define discovery session, I don't know if it's confusing that I use 2 Ds in there, but I already mentioned we ask a lot of questions about culture, but we focus it on stories. So I love stories, and I found that I get the best information from people if I ask them to form it in some kind of exact story. So for example, maybe there's a role they've been trying to fill, and they've had somebody in the past who was great in that role, or maybe just a similar role. So I'll say, well, tell me about that person who, really kicked it out of the park. What did they do? And I'll say, and don't talk to me broadly. I want you to think of a specific time. And this is the same way I interview, by the way, a specific time, a specific example, and walk me through that story. What was the challenge? How did they show up? What did they do? And you'd be amazed at how much we can then extract out of that story about who they're
Finding the ideal person.
right. And then we'll turn it around. Now I want to think about somebody who hopefully is no longer on your team, but someone who, did not kick it out of the park. You knew pretty early on they were not the right
Yeah.
thing. And we do this both for culture and role, since it can be very different for each. It could, it might end up being the same, but there'll be some crossover, but you do want to separate it because different things come out. And, sometimes they'll start off being like, well, it's the opposite of what I just said. Well, okay, but tell me a specific example. So the more, and sometimes people will get frustrated because these are busy CEOs. We are often doing this because we normally will work with, medium-sized companies that are growing, often that, have a large team. But we, as much as possible, we do ask them to bring their team to the discovery session, especially the hiring managers. But anything we can pull out of the CEO is gold, So we just go through different questions like that. And then we'll start asking questions about, okay, the person has been with you for 30 days and you made the right choice. They are, you're about to do a 30-day check-in with them and tell them that you're so happy they're on the team because now what are the things they've accomplished in those 30 days that you'll now give them excellent feedback. I mean, hopefully they've been giving excellent feedback all along, but and then we'll do the same for 60 days and 90 days. And we take that information and they become the outcomes that go into the job posting. Because I think one of you said this early on, people want to know what the expectations are, not just as daily expectations, you smile each day or whatever, but what do they need to achieve? It doesn't matter what job it is, but what do they need to achieve to know that they're doing amazing in this job? And then, what other opportunities are there for them? So we're also going to talk about that in this session. What can they grow into if they want? Some might be a job for a few years while they're in school, but it doesn't mean that they don't want to learn something different that will prepare them for their next role. I always will ask team members, yes, this is your role, but is there something outside your role that you really want to learn, and that you want to get good at? It could be something that helps you with your role, or it could not be. We'll find a way if it fits in with the business, but with that we can give you experience with that, and that that leads into hire as well, into the motive.
It really benefits both sides to have the clear expectations in writing, and then those same expectations on your job post, matching those in your interview, and then then it needs to match it when they're hired. It needs to be consistent across. And we want to dive into that interviewing spot. I know you mentioned how in your dream assessment, the more specific you can get and taking through a scenario, that's kind of a strategy you use for your interviews. Can you give us a few more just tips on structuring interview questions to make sure you get the right person?
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to actually walk you through the template we use for interviewing. Sometimes I get pushback on this. I do, especially over the years. I have gotten some pushback from HR people because it sounds a little bit similar to how you may have interviewed, but it's slightly different and it's uncomfortable for some people. The first thing we do is we start just about every question, and this also can be uncomfortable sometimes, starting each question the same, with could you share? Now there's a reason for that. You might remember traditional interview questions are very directional. They will say, tell me this or give me this. And it subtly sort of gives, it gets the defenses
Takes the tone, yeah,
of the candidate. I remember years ago, people would boast about doing interviews and making the candidate really suffer, like being really tough. No, you're not going to get to know them, especially now, because they can, make up answers and practice what they're going to do. And
but they're going to get to know you as the interviewer that they don't want to work there, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, because it's a perfect point. So, so we always share with could you share, because it sounds very conversational.
Yeah.
And it makes them feel like they have a choice of what they, we have had people say no, very rarely, but it kind of brings defenses down. And it helps you to also get in the framework of a conversation and to help them feel more comfortable. So we do, could you share? And now here's where the example comes in. And this is the power phrase, a specific example. And on all the interview guides we do, anytime we write interview questions, we put specific example in capital letters.
This, yeah.
Because I can't tell you how, and we'll still do that. And I'll be doing a training with a client, and we might be in a role play or something. And they'll skip over a specific example. Could you share an example? Or could you share whatever? And I'm like, no. I want you to emphasize specific example, because we want the candidate to hear that so that they share it. But the other reason is, if you really make it clear, I want to hear a specific example, and then they talk very hypothetically, broadly, you're learning a couple of things. One, they might not have a specific example, so they may not have actually experienced what they're saying they can do. And we'll get into that in a minute, what that examples are. Or two, they're terrible listeners. So what I usually do is say, I'll ask a question. I really emphasize specific example. And if they kind of talk broadly, I'll say, thank you for that. Could you share a specific example? And if they still don't, then I just move on. And I know that, isn't, and I'll continue. The other questions will be asking for specific examples too. And if, it's all about patterns. If they also are not sharing specific examples later, then they're probably not the right fit. And I might even end early. But I usually say you're looking for like 80-85%, because nobody's going to be perfect. If they're 100%, then
nervous
that
or
might
whatever.
be a red flag. So the specific example that you're asking is something that this candidate would encounter in this role, and at your company. A very easy one I usually share is, could you share a specific example? Because we do customer service a lot. Could you share a specific example of a time you had a difficult customer? Now you notice what I didn't say was, and how did you,
Handle it.
handle it? How did you make it? What is, somebody's always asking, like, tell me about a time that you made a customer experience so incredible. I forget the exact words they use, but I'm like, you're just telling them exactly how you want them to answer.
Yeah, right.
And figure out great customer experience, even if most of the time they offer horrible customer experience.
Yeah.
So if you say, and this is where I got pushback with HR people, because HR people usually have really good hearts, right? It's a really hard industry, and they want people to feel good. Maybe, and I'm probably generalizing. I'm just saying what I've seen when I go to HR conferences. People are really nice. So,
Yeah, they are.
yeah, it's it's so different, but it's, you want to see how they actually showed up in a challenge. So if you ask them for a specific example of a time that a difficult client or customer, the first thing that comes to mind will probably be somebody who gave them a really hard time. And you have to really listen about what happened there. I usually will teach the CAR method. It's context, action, and results. Took me a minute to remember. So the context is just, you want to really learn as much about the situation as possible. So if sometimes people aren't going to walk you through in as much detail as you need, so you kind of have to coach them, but without giving things away. So you might want to say, just kind of walk me through what led up to this situation. How did you become aware of it? When did you become involved? And then often candidates, because we're taught to talk in team language, right? We did this or we did that. And it doesn't matter what the situation is. I usually have to give them permission to use I, because they'll say, we resolved it and we did this, and this. And I'll say, okay, that's great. And I'll say, this is an interview, and I just want to give you permission from now on to talk specifically about your actions. So can you walk me through again and just tell me exactly what your actions were? Situation. And then, you get much more information. I think often when we're doing an interview and the candidates really know what to say, they probably observed sometimes the right actions in a certain situation, but that doesn't mean they were the ones who stepped up. So you want to really dig in and learn what were their actions. Did they call their supervisor, and did their supervisor actually resolve it? So is this somebody who could be resourceful? Is this someone who is just going to pass the buck? So you kind of get the idea. And the other thing is, they can't learn that on the internet. The more details, it would be very difficult for them to lie or to expand the details. They didn't actually live it. So you kind of want to see them living through it.
Yeah, those are like very subtle hints and strategies that really get the genuine person out in the interview. You are skilled. You know your stuff, Andrea.
Yeah, I'm very impressed. Like, this has been, I've done hiring in a couple different capacities, and this was so insightful for me personally. I think the DREAM framework flows very nicely. It's very intuitive, and I see the depth behind those different, those different 5 steps, and some of these expert tips that you've shared about. Could you share? You did share, and a specific example. You totally did that. So you're practicing what you preach here, and we would love for our listeners to be able to continue, learning from you, and we'll make sure that your LinkedIn is connected on the highlight article in the post, so that people can come connect with you, Andrea.
And check out the job post roast.
Yes.
It's going to be cool. I'm going to be watching for it too. So,
but as we kind of wrap up, any final comments as we close here?
I usually like to just say, start with one thing, because I've had clients say to me, or prospective clients even, I don't even know where to start. This is overwhelming. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, let's just figure out what is going to make the best ROI for you, what's going to move the buck the most, and let's start there. This is not really difficult stuff. If you just pick one thing and focus on it, you can implement it, and it will be amazing, the results that you see.
It is very organized, though. I love it. And Andrea, thank you so much for your time today. All of your insights and tips were spot on. So everybody check out her LinkedIn and follow her, and tune in for our next episode.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. Appreciate it.
Thank you. This has been fun.
Thanks for tuning in to the Culture Profit podcast, and for being a part of our journey to prove that putting people first is best for business.
Today's episode was sponsored by Mobrium.
Want to get more employee reviews and streamline your employer reputation? Visit mobrium.com.
Now go find one way to prioritize your people and watch your profits grow.